Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I'm going to show you 4 steps to transforming a lifeless kick drum into a powerful rock kick. We're going to be looking at kick drum transformation today, but before we dive in, if you are ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety and really start to hone your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the thing for you. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and it's just a simple PDF that will walk you through the entire mixing process step by step to help you get professional and radio ready mixes without any more hassle and without any more of the guesswork. It is a completely free guide, and you can download it below using the link in the video description. Now let's jump in here and look at this kick drum. To start, let me play you these drums by themselves so you can hear the kick drum at least in context of the full drum kit. Then I will play you the kick drum by itself, and I will take off the plugins. You can hear where we started with this kick drum. Pretty dull, pretty lifeless sounding. But here's the full kit as a whole, so you can get the full picture here. So you can hear it's pretty weak to start here, pretty dull, not a lot of attack, not a lot of life, not a lot of oomph to it. So we're going to change that in 4 steps here. The first step for me when working with a kick drum, especially one that's like this, as dull and as lifeless as it is, you can see there are some parts here where they really lay into the kick drum. So what we want to do is we want to even out the sound before we start to radically EQ it or radically compress it to change and shape the sound. That's why our first element here is this limiter. So I have it down at about -9. Our ceiling's at -9. We're doing about 3 dB of limiting, if that, on the biggest peaks of our drum here. So take a look here. So you can see we're just pulling those bigger hits back a little bit, because usually when you have a more aggressive hit, you get a more aggressive sound out of the kick drum. Now that's not necessarily the case here, as the kick drum doesn't have a lot of life to it. So even when the drummer lays into the kick drum, we're not getting any more punch, we're not getting any more attack, and we're not getting any more top end from the beater hit, which is kind of strange. It's not normal, but it's what we're dealing with this kick drum. So we want the sound to be even to begin with before we start to radically change it. That way, if we boost low end or we boost top end, certain frequencies don't jump out on certain hits of the kick drum. So we get it even, then we can move on to step 2. So step 1, use a limiter, use a compressor, set the ratio really, really high if need be, and get a little bit of evening on your kick drum. We're only doing 3 dB of limiting at the max here on the bigger hits. You can see some of those more moderate hits, we're doing about 1 dB of limiting just to even out our kick drum overall. Step number 2 is getting rid of frequencies we don't need here. So if we move on to our EQ here, you can see we have some drastic boosts coming down the line. We will talk about those in a minute here. We're going to focus in on these cuts to begin with. We've got 3 cuts here we're doing. Then we'll move on to our next step. So step 2 here is reducing the frequencies that you don't want or any nasty frequencies in your drum. First thing we do here is always getting rid of any extra low end or any booming sub frequencies that we don't need in the kick drum. So let me A/B that for you. I'll take off these other cuts here for the moment. You can hear how our low end tightens up when we put in the high pass filter. So it's a funny thing, but sometimes this is how it goes, right? By reducing low end, we actually get more low end. So by pulling our high pass filter up to about 40 hertz here, we're reducing some of that sub information, so some of that low end that's way, way down there. but it tightens up our low end around 80 hertz, 70 hertz, 60 hertz, and it makes it feel more powerful and more punchy in that area. So let's start with it off here, and I'll kick it in for you. Tightens up our kick drum sound a little bit and helps to even out the low end so it's not all over the place. Without it in, you have those big bursts of the sub information on some of these kick hits, and it makes the kick drum feel a little bit too flappy and a little bit too loose sounding. We put this high pass in and focus our low end, keep it consistent here around the 70, 80 hertz area, makes it feel punchier and makes it feel tighter. That's our first cut here. Next one we're moving up to is the low mids, or the moving up into the mid-range here. We're doing about an 8 dB reduction at 400 hertz. So this is that low mid area where things are getting a little bit too muddy or too flappy sounding. So these two cuts are going to take care of those. Let's start here with our 400 hertz cut, and then we'll move up to this one at about 900 hertz. So that's going to take care of a little bit more of the mid-range slap that we're getting. Carving out some of the frequencies we don't need here. At 400 hertz and at 900 hertz there was this weird kind of mid-range thwack that we don't want in our kick drum. We want that thwack, that kind of attack sound, to be elsewhere. We want to get some from our low end, and we want to get some up on the top end. That's where we want our punch to be. We don't want it sitting here at 400, 900 hertz. That's a weird mid-rangey sound for the kick drum. We're carving those out, and you can hear it softens up our kick drum tone a little bit. But it's a better starting point than having those frequencies grouped up in the mid-range there. That's step number 2. Step number 1 is to even out your volume of your kick drum, so a little bit of limiting there. Step number 2 is to reduce any nasty frequencies or reduce any unwanted frequencies. Step number 3 is compression. So from our compressor here, we're going to get our kick drum nice and tight, we're going to get nice and even, and we're going to get a little bit of attack from this compressor because we're going to crush it quite a bit here. If we turn on the compressor, this is just the stock compressor inside of Studio One. Our attack's at 30 milliseconds. That's going to make sure we have enough time before the compressor starts working for the initial transient of the drum to come through. That way, when we're compressing, we preserve the natural attack of the drum. Our release is a little bit on the quicker side here, around 80 milliseconds. That you can see we have a lot of doubles here, so we want the compressor to let go before our next kick hit. Again, to preserve all the attack that we can. We don't want the compressor still hanging on when our next kick hit happens, otherwise we'll neuter the attack of that hit there. We're at 3-to-1, so we're not going too aggressive with our ratio, but you can see our compression here is going to be aggressive when I hit play. Doing a little bit of makeup gain as well on the output here, but let me hit play here. You can see how much reduction we're doing, and when I kick it in, you can hear how our kick drum changes. We lose a little bit of volume, we lose a ton of low end from squashing the kick drum this much. But if you listen again here, I'll hit play one more time, listen to that snap that we gain on the top end. It's really, really beneficial, especially to a kick drum like this that doesn't have a lot of life and it doesn't have a lot of power to begin with, that we get some of that snap up on the top end. So that's what we're using this compressor for, tightens up our kick drum quite a bit, and we get some of that snap on the top end. We're reducing our low end and our overall volume, but that's okay. We're going to get that back here in a second. One more time, a before and after on this compressor. So now we've got a very consistent kick drum that we can start to boost frequencies that we want in this kick drum, or enhance frequency areas that we want to hear from this kick drum. That's going to be our step 3. One more time, a little bit of review. Step 1 is using our limiter to even out the sound before we start aggressively shaping it. Step number 2 is reducing any nasty frequencies or unwanted frequencies in the drum that we don't want to hear. Step number 3 is using our compressor to, again, do a little bit more evening of the tone. We're going to get some of that with this 8 dB of compression. But we want to get that snap, and we want to emphasize that attack as much as we can to get some power from this kick drum. Step number 4 here is going to be boosting. So our first boost here, we're going to go back to this EQ here. First thing I'm always boosting is up in this 8K area. And you can see we're boosting it all the way up as far as we can go on this EQ, 24 dB at 8K. There was absolutely no top end on this kick drum to start with. We had no click, no beater attack, so we had to boost as much as possible here. 24 dB at 8K. Let me kick this in, and you can hear what it does to our kick drum sound overall. Quite a radical shift in the frequencies of this kick drum, but it's the most crucial boost, I would say, that we've done on this kick drum to really bring to life the top end energy and to get some of that beater attack. That beater slapping against the kick drum skin is what you want to hear in the mix on the top end. That helps the kick drum cut through and feel big and feel powerful and be a force to be reckoned with inside of the mix here. So that's our first boost here. 24 dB at 8K. It seems like a lot, but in context there when we're listening to it, putting this boost in and out, it really helps our kick drum come to life on the top end. We get a little bit extra of the bleed, but that's okay. That won't be too much of a hassle inside the entire mix here. Next boost we're doing here is about 7 dB at 3.21K. So this is a little bit lower on the spectrum, but it's, again, going to help us get some of that attack, but on the lower end of the spectrum, around 3K. Let me just play you this boost here so you can hear what we're adding into our kick drum with this boost here. It helps to round out our top end. We get kind of that, I don't know, that sucky sound of, it's like when someone's kicking a soccer ball, right? It's that kind of sucky sound you get as their foot makes contact with the ball. Same kind of thing we're getting as the beater hits the head of the kick drum here. And you can see if you're watching here, it helps to make sure our top end is consistent across the board here, rather than having a whole bunch of energy up at 8K and then it just slopes off till we get down to our low end here. Those are our first two boosts. Last boost we're doing here, well, a little bit more up on the top end as well here, but we're doing a big boost here. This is our last crucial boost here, is the one at 70 hertz here. So I usually like the kick drum to be focused anywhere from 60 to 80 hertz as the fundamental. I wanted it to be at 80 hertz here, but I didn't want to boost too much of this area up at 100, and I still wanted to bring some in on the low end. So we centered at 70 hertz. That way, as we boost, we get that lift at 80 hertz without going too high towards the 100, 110 area, but we still get to maintain some of this down here as well, instead of just, narrowing our Q overall. And then a little bit extra energy here at 8K, since we maxed it out here, going as high as we could with this boost. A little bit extra energy here. About 2.5 dB at 8K. Let me A/B this boost here for you though. Well, I'll do this overall here because the biggest energy, the biggest boost we're getting here is this low end energy. This is what rounds out our kick drum overall. So we've done our compression to get our attack. We've removed any frequencies that we don't want, evened it out with our limiter. Now we're shaping it, right? We've done our boost up on the top end at 8K, at 3K to get that attack, to get that kind of sucky sound, that beater attack that we want, that beater punch. Now we need to bring the low end punch in and the low end weight into our kick drum and make sure that's sitting nicely. You have to make sure your kick drum is even before you do this. Otherwise, you're going to get inconsistent low end. So take a listen to this boost here at about 70 hertz. That's the kick drum sound. So the biggest changes that you can hear that are audible feel like this 8K boost and this 70 hertz boost. Those feel like the most crucial elements, and in a sense they are, but if you don't do everything we did prior to that, these boosts won't have the effect that they're having here. You have to make sure you're starting with an even kick drum. Otherwise, these boosts are going to feel inconsistent. Some hits you'll get more top end, some hits you'll get more low end, but it won't be even across the board. You have to make sure you get rid of any unwanted frequencies. So that's our step 2 here. And you have to make sure, so this cut here, or this filtering on the low end helps to tighten up our low end and focus it. Before we boost it, you have to focus it. Otherwise, this boost will reach too far down into the sub area. And again, our low end would be inconsistent. Then our compressor here helps to give us that attack on the top end that we can boost. We're boosting into our compressor to help emphasize that attack on the top end, but if you don't do this compression here, again, about 8 dB of compression here, 30 millisecond attack, 80 millisecond release. If you don't do this compression, you're not going to have that attack up on the top end to emphasize. You'll just be bringing up a whole bunch of air on the kick drum. You'll get some top end, but it won't have that punch and that attack to it. And then just this boost on the low end. Everything before it leads up to these boosts here being as important and as effective as they are. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was interesting and eye-opening to see how you can take a pretty lifeless or dull-sounding kick drum to a powerful, punchy rock kick drum with just a few steps here, just a few plugins, just a few techniques. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're ready to take your mixes to the next level and really start dialing in your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and you can download it below to start creating more professional mixes in less time. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you in the next video.